All right. Woo! It's loud. I can be loud. All right. Well, welcome, everyone, to the meeting of the Colorado Water Conservation Board. It's good to have you all here, and we're looking forward to another great meeting. And we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. And Director Hawkins, I almost called her Celine. Director Hawkins, will you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is our November 14th and 15th, 2018 meeting. So we're looking forward to getting started here. Have you all had a chance to look at the agenda? We have a couple of changes on the agenda, so I'll go over those, and then you can, if you have any additions or corrections to the agenda, you can let me know. On agenda item 3, the consent agenda will be removing item 1A and 1B from the consent agenda, and we'll be moving them to open session after lunch tomorrow. So before agenda item 18. So agenda item 1A and 1B will be in open session. We'll also move them into executive session so we can talk about some legal advice in executive session, which is before lunch. So that's the only change, is that correct? Yep. Are there any other items? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda with the changes that I stated. It's been moved by Director Hawkins, second by Director Gallagher, that we approve the agenda with the changes as mentioned earlier. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right. And now to the minutes of our September 19th and 20th meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? I want to thank Viola for getting them out early, and we were able to look, I was able to look at them early, so thank you, and make a few changes. Does anybody have any? No? I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes.
It's been moved by Director Gallagher, second by Director Dutton, that we approve the minutes from the September 19th and 20th, 2018 Colorado Water Conservation Board meeting. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we shall proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And now to the consent agenda items. As I said, we removed the first two from that list, item 1A and 1B. And I just wanted to state, as always, if anybody has in the audience would like to make public comment on any of the consent agenda items, because sometimes we go through this fairly quickly, but you're always welcome to do that. So, and I know there were a couple of them that we've now moved to tomorrow, and if somebody is here that would like to speak on those two, or if you would rather wait till tomorrow, you'll have the opportunity as well. So I just wanted to give you the opportunity to do that. So, all right. Doesn't look like we have any. So we'll move on with the consent agenda items. So we're up to agenda item 1C. And my computer's not coming up. 1C is? I can't remember from memory. Oh, you still have the old style notebook. Wow.
Save the day.
She saved the day. All right, agenda item, or consent agenda items, I guess 1C and 1D. We'll go ahead and I would entertain a moment to approve the consent agenda with the changes that we made. Director Wells.
I'll move to approve items 1C and 1D on the consent agenda.
It's been moved by Director Wells, second by Director Goebel, that we approve the consent agenda items 1C and 1D. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we shall proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, now we're on to proposed board meeting dates are given in your packet and the lists for next year. So if you have any questions about those, we can address those here. If not, we'll continue to move on. All right, agenda item 5, director's reports. Director Randall.
Great, thank you, Chairman Yan. Good morning, everyone. Great to see you here. Hope everyone had a safe trip to Denver. It's nice to have some sunny weather after a cold weekend and some snow on the ground. So this is an interesting time of year, right? We're entering the holiday season. I hope everyone is girding for that. Most of us follow the Gregorian calendar, right? That's the 12-month calendar. Some of us follow the fiscal year calendar, depending on when the start of your fiscal year is. And some of us follow the political calendar, right? So here we are. That involves a couple of things that I'm going to touch on. I'm also going to talk about some outdoor recreation numbers that we just announced a couple weeks ago that I'm really proud of, a couple of oil and gas things, and then a special announcement. So that's to keep you enticed to pay attention. So first, just on transition. A couple of weeks ago, on November 1st, the governor issued his last proposed budget. And it was a privilege to be a part of that. The governor is really focused on building up the state's reserves during a time of relatively good general fund. There's a request for an 8% reserve. That's up from 2.3% in 2011. And it really shows how far the state's come since the Great Recession. We're only now returning to 2009 spending levels out of the general fund. That's accounting for inflation and population changes. And so the governor has sought to make such investments during times of relative good news on the general fund. And one such investment that you might have seen was the budget letter includes a request for a three-year, $30 million investment in water from the general fund. And so again, this is in the governor's November 1st budget. We anticipate that money going to the construction fund through legislation in the next session. Likely to be used for water plan grants and for compact compliance work, and could be used for demand management, a topic that we're going to talk a lot about tomorrow. But really, I think the governor intended for it to be an investment in water security and a 3-year advance payment on Colorado's water plan. We all recognize that that's not enough, and we will continue our work to identify long-term sustainable funding sources. But that this is a down payment over the next 3 years of an additional $30 million for the water plan. So again, happy to see that investment being proposed by the governor, and we'll see how it shakes out during next year's legislative session. Second, Governor-elect Polis has announced his transition work. There's a website called Boldly Forward that folks can check out to see the transition teams that will be working with the departments. The team that will be looking at transitions that include the Department of Natural Resources, Department of Agriculture, Colorado's Energy Office, and the Department of Public Health and Environment is chaired by Governor Ritter, former Governor Ritter, and Andrew Curry. That's all public information. It includes a handful of folks that have been named to that committee, including Dr. John Stolp. So John, thanks in advance for your service through that process. So that's kind of all there is on that, really. I mean, I'm happy to take any questions about the transition to the extent I can try to answer them. It's only a week old. But we have started to meet with new legislators that will be coming into office in January and trying to ensure the continued success of the department's programs and pursuit of our legislative agenda into the next session. On October 26th, so again, just a couple weeks ago, the Governor Hickenlooper signed an executive order addressing outdoor recreation, and it was a great event down at Confluence Park in Denver. Included a bunch of our partners from the conservation community, the ag community, and the business community. And it's all really pursuant to Colorado the Beautiful. This was Governor Hickenlooper's initiative announced a few years ago that within a generation, every Coloradan will live within 10 minutes of a park, a trail, or an open space. And it was also pursuant to Parks and Wildlife's work on the SCORP, the Statewide Conservation Outdoor Recreation Plan, which is a mouthful, even though SCORP is kind of an awkward acronym. It's better than the real title. But at that event, Governor Hickenlooper touted some new economic numbers that have been developed by CPW about the impact of outdoor recreation in Colorado. So I just want to share some of those. So in 2017, the outdoor recreation industry contributed $62 billion to Colorado's economy and $37 billion in consumer spending to the GDP. And that's more than 10%. So these numbers are bigger than we've seen from the Outdoor Industry Association. OIA tends to look at outdoor recreation activities farther from home than CPW did. CPW looked at, through its consultants, looked at the economic value of local parks, of running on a green belt, of going on a mountain bike ride or something like that closer to home, fishing in an area lake and stuff like that. So again, really trying to capture all of what makes this such an important activity in Colorado. Outdoor recreation supports over 500,000 jobs in Colorado, 511,000 jobs. That's 19% of the labor force in Colorado. And it's a major tourism driver. Outdoor recreation attracted more than 84 million visitors from out of state in 2017, generating over $20 billion in traveler spending, and that produced $1.25 billion in state and local tax revenues. And these are benefits that are felt statewide. Over 20% of the economic output and over 25% of the jobs associated with outdoor recreation are based in the northwest part of the state. So again, it's got rural and benefits to rural and urban communities. The governor's announcement also touted the Colorado Outdoor Partnership. This is an effort started by CPW Director Broscheid. I wish he was here so he could feel this well-deserved pat on the back, but this was formed in 2017 that includes leaders from government agencies at the state and local and national level, NGOs and conservation and recreation groups, with the idea that we really have to collaborate and innovate in order to ensure that Colorado's lands are healthy enough to support wildlife and its habitat, our outdoor and agricultural heritage, and our economic well-being. And so I'm really proud to have been a part of the Outdoor Partnership and hope that that work continues. Finally, the executive order created an interagency Trails and Recreation Council. This, again, was started a few years ago, but the EO formalized it. It'll include representatives from the Department of Natural Resources, Parks and Wildlife, CDOT, the Department of Local Affairs, CDPHE, the Office of Economic Development and International Trade, that's both the Outdoor Recreation Industry Office and the Tourism Office, and GOCO, really in an effort to work together to recognize that we all have a role in trail planning and transportation planning, and that as we consider those things together, it has conservation benefits and it also has economic benefits. And then finally, the EO called for us to finish something that we knew we were going to finish anyway by November 1st, and that was a new statewide trail application. So it's called CoTrex. This is the icon. You can see it in your iOS or your Android app store. It was launched on October 30th. It is the first statewide trail application in the state of Colorado, and one of the first in the nation. It includes 40,000 miles of trails that are categorized by the uses that are allowed there. So hiking trails, biking trails, horseback trails, OHV trails, motorbike trails. It includes information on 3,600 trailheads. We're working with the tourism office to try to drive visitors to under-visited areas of the state, both to realize the economic benefit of that activity and also to disperse people away from some of the most popular areas in the state to minimize the impacts on them. You can find it online at trails.colorado.gov, or again, you can go to the App Store, put in CoTrex and look for this little icon. So there's that. Couple of quick things on oil and gas, just because no update would be complete without it. There was an executive order in July of this year to address orphan wells. These are wells for which there's no viable owner, and that essentially become wards of the state. It called for the creation by the Oil and Gas Commission of a Financial Assurance Technical Working Group, also a great acronym, FATWAG, so for those of you keeping track. It was to review the financial assurance requirements that are in place today and to report recommendations to the governor by December 1st. And so that work is underway. The group includes representatives from local, state, and federal government, the environmental community, the oil and gas industry, and some private citizens. And it's met 4 times so far to review current financial assurance requirements, best practices in other states, and proposals for modernizing our current financial assurance rules. That could include bonding, it could include other measures. The Commission's also undertaking a rulemaking to address drilling activities in proximity to schools. This is the subject of legislation that was introduced last year, didn't become law, but we received a rulemaking petition that proposed to require new facilities to be no closer than 1,000 feet from the perimeter of school or child care center property lines as opposed to buildings. Today we measure from buildings. The proposal was to measure from property lines. There's been a group working together to identify scope of this rulemaking. Do you measure from the property line, or do you measure from where students or people gather? What daycare centers should it apply to? Should it apply to public and private schools? What should the notice look like? What's the role of school districts and school boards and things like that? So that rulemaking is scheduled for December 17th and 18th. And all of this work is being done with an eye on the backdrop of Proposition 112 not passing, yet over 1 million people voted for it. So this is an issue that is important to be addressed. And the upcoming legislative session. Again, these are subjects that have been discussed in the General Assembly over the last couple of years. So now for my special announcement. So late last week, I was privileged to sign an administrative order, which I get to do, establishing a pollinator policy for the state of Colorado and for the Department of Natural Resources, shoring up my support among the pollinator advocate community. No, just kidding about that. The Department of Natural Resources and Parks and Wildlife has authority over all native species in the state of Colorado, and that includes pollinators. So these are bees and bats and wasps, which I tried to strike out of the administrative order, but they wouldn't let me. And so it really directs all of the agencies within DNR for which there's a land nexus. So the State Land Board, Parks and Wildlife, the Oil and Gas Commission, and the Mining Division, to do just a couple of things, and that is to consider pollinator conservation practices when they're making wildlife management decisions or habitat management decisions, and to incorporate pollinator strategies in their property management, whether that's reclamation of a mining site or an oil and gas site, or just management of state trust lands located all around the state. So this is work that we think will be important to wildlife species, to the agricultural community and their reliance on pollinators, and just on all of the economic, all the economies that rely on those. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
All right. Thanks, Director Randall.
You bet.
That was pretty special. Director Wells.
And does your proclamation have anything to do with the pollinator highway?
No, tell me more.
I think it's here. I don't think it's in Arizona. A route along which they try to plant, and maybe it's DOT, I don't know, try to plant shrubs and things that attract pollinators. So they have somewhere to land. Yes, instead of vast, empty, non-pollinator bushes. But anyway, I read it and I think it was here. So.
Any other questions for Director Randall? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
IBCC Director Dr. Stolp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Board. While we're on the pollinators topic, there are some USDA programs through the Conservation Reserve Program that encourage pollinator type of habitats, and I know a lot of people have taken advantage of that. So it is becoming more and more popular. To IBCC, not the fanfare that the governor got on the 31st, but we delivered a report to the ag committees on the IBCC and the activities for the last year, which is required by the statute that created us as at the same time the Water Supply Reserve funding account. A summary of that's delivered by email electronically. And I think most of you should have been copied. I know the IBCC was, and so that report is available electronically. I thought the interesting thing as you look at the Water Supply Reserve funding report is it's the summary of what's been invested over the number of years this program's been in effect, and it's then it's broken out into agriculture and environment and consumptive and non-consumptive categories. And so if you have a chance to review that, I think that speaks well for what Conservation Board through the roundtables has been doing with those funds. I think most of you knew that the IBCC met last month in Durango and hosted by the Southwest District down there, and appreciate their hospitality. It's been a while since we've been down there. We've been promising Bruce for maybe a decade, but anyway, we finally made it. Had a good meeting, had presentations with some of the usuals, talking more about the Colorado River situation and the DCPs. Also, we concentrated primarily on, had a funding panel there that incorporated people from the Walton Gates Foundation as well as the Ag Water Irrigation Planning Group and the IBCC, and had a good panel discussion and discussion on potential funding sources and how that'd be cataloged or invested. Of course, a lot of that is contingent upon the election results, as we are meeting before the election, and then so there's going to be some further election analysis. I was part of an analysis done by the CDOT folks following that. And of course, they see the silver lining in everything, I guess, even though the two transportation issues went down. There's a theory that the people that voted for the 109 didn't vote for 110 and vice versa. So if you're the eternal optimist, you can take the 40% that voted for each of them, and you might get to 50% plus in a future election. And so there's always optimism in any kind of situation. And so with the fact that those two transportation issues and the school issue on additional funding went down, I think the funding folks will reevaluate that and have some more focus groups and things like that on what people might vote for, or if there are other avenues such as legislation that might be able to get some of the funding. And I appreciate Bob mentioning the governor's inclusion of $30 million in the budget. We'll see how that fares with the new legislature. The IBCC obviously concentrated on the 5 different categories that had come out of the work group, and then it was expanded to the 6th one, which include being able to comply with compacts that Colorado is responsible for, with a special emphasis on the Colorado River. And so I think that was endorsed, that 6th item on the categories was endorsed by the IBCC. And so I think we're getting to a good place. The Walton Gates Keystone Group are going to be issuing, I think, not necessarily a formal document, but kind of a summary of where they think they are here in the near future. They've been taking comments from the different people that participated in that effort. IBCC tentatively will probably meet again in February, try to get past the water month of January with the new reorganization of the General Assembly and the Water Congress, and so we should be ready to go back to work at that point. Appreciate the comments from Bob on the transition. I wish I could offer more than what he reported on. We're having our first kind of formal meeting later this week. And so my email and texting has been very popular for the last 48 hours. One other quick thing, you should never let me go to a conference. There's a 2-day conference going on at CSU right now on aquifer storage and recovery. Kevin and I were at that yesterday and presented different parts of it. And I think Eric Sky was there. He may be there this morning too. It's a 1.5 day, 2-day meeting. It kind of, their question of me was, how does this relate aquifer storage and recovery to the water plan? And so I think we had a good discussion on that it's part of the storage element. And I think I learned a few things on the potential we have in aquifer storage, whether it's deep formations or near the surface type of formations. We've got tremendous potential in Colorado and in many locations you normally don't think of that. And of course, Centennial Highlands Ranch folks have about 15,000 acre feet stored away in their aquifer at this point. We know Denver Water's looking at, been doing some test boring and some things like that. So this is another potential storage tool for that storage chest. Other than that, I think that's all I have at this point. Any questions of me?
I can't shut it off. What's that? There we go. Thank you. Okay. All right. We'll continue on with our Agriculture Commissioner report, and filling in for Director Brown is Jen Yezik.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm Jen Yezik, the Deputy Commissioner, and I do send greetings from Commissioner Don Brown. This morning, he is meeting with the Western Commissioners and Directors of Agriculture near the Denver Airport. They're discussing trade strategies for the future, so that's where he is located. And I'll continue with the trade theme in the sense of there was hopefulness when the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement was announced most recently. But however, we are still concerned about the retaliatory tariffs with aluminum and steel and how that may negate some of the export gains. So we continue to watch the trade negotiations and needs of our state and of all of agriculture. Yesterday, Commissioner Brown and I were on a phone call with the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Deputy Secretary, and he talked about how about $1.2 billion in payments were going to farmers in regards to their trade mediation programs. Sign up is slower than expected because across the United States, weather has impacted agriculture, and those sign up is still January 15th, 2019. Another federal item that we're still looking at is the stalled 2018 Farm Bill, and we're hoping that during this lame duck session of Congress that they will pass it. When you look at various press reports, sometimes it's very optimistic, and then other times they have so much to do between now and the mid-December that it may not be possible. But those two items of trade and the Farm Bill are definitely impacting agriculture. And as Bob said, the governor's budget was announced, and in that budget, there was a new investment in Colorado's agriculture industry. It's a new general fund investment of $300,000 to help with international marketing efforts. We hope this will promote Colorado's ag industry and will support new jobs and business growth in rural Colorado. In this time of transition, we will build upon this, the continued efforts to educate consumers and leaders on the importance of agriculture, since it's one of the top industries in our state. Another exciting item, though, to announce is that we are continuing to make progress on our new laboratory at our Broomfield headquarters. This is where we're moving our older labs that are in downtown Denver and the Highlands area to Broomfield. That's our biochemistry lab, our animal health laboratory, as well as our metrology weights and laboratory are all moving there, and we anticipate that to be completed in the spring of 2019, March timeframe. And with that consolidation of all our offices, except for the State Fair, all in Broomfield, we announced a position of Director of the Division of Laboratory Services. So that job announcement was put out in October, and we look forward to being able to announce a new Director of the Division of Laboratory Services in the near future. Another item that was in the governor's budget was about $77,000 for a new biological pest control FTE at our insectary in Palisade. So we glad to see the acknowledgement of working again with controlling noxious weeds and other weeds across the state. One of the other announcements with the deadline of December 1st is our Noxious Weed Advisory Committee is looking to nominate 2 agricultural producers, 1 private landowner, and 2 at-large positions. So if you and your colleagues know of anyone who wants to serve on CDA's Noxious Weed Advisory Committee, we would look forward to having your recommendations by December 1st to CDA. They work on putting our noxious weed list together and those type of activities, and so we would appreciate your input in regards to that. Also this week, just to put it on your calendars, is that the Colorado Farm Bureau is having their annual meeting in Denver starting on the 16th through the 18th of November, and that the Rocky Mountain Farmers Union Convention is in Cheyenne, November 16th through the 17th. So 2 key agricultural groups are meeting this week, I'm sure, to get ready for the legislative session and with the new transition with our administration. So just wanted to share those items with y'all all.
All right. Thank you, Jen. Any questions? All right. Well, we'll continue on with the CWCB Director's Report. Director Mitchell.
Thank you. And I just want to remind everybody, I try to take a lot of the my talking points for this from the director's report that's written, and it's hundreds of pages. So in the agenda, so I'm not going to go on that long, maybe just an hour and a half or so. But a lot happens between those board meetings, and so in that director's report, you get to hear about what the staff is doing. So the 45 people of the agency, and so I'm going to briefly update on what's going on. Last board meeting, you heard me talk about the funding for the Colorado River Endangered Fish Recovery Programs and the Glen Canyon Adaptive Management Program. We had some concern about what was going to happen with that. I am happy to say that we have secured funding for fiscal year 19. Don't get too excited. It's a one-year fix. The president signed the Energy and Water Appropriations Bill that provides just a year's worth of appropriations for these programs. CWCB, DNR, and the AG's office worked actively with the state and non-federal partners to convey the value of these programs. Letters were sent out not only from the governors, but the Upper Colorado River Basin states, the Colorado River Basin principals, but also Water Congress, water users, environmental organizations. Those letters were influential, and we have a one-year fix, but we are watching to make sure that we can get a long-term fix on this funding. And so I just wanted to update you all on that. In terms of drought, I know we got some snow this week, so I don't want to be Debbie Downer, but we still have some persistent drought conditions throughout parts of the state. You recall the governor activated drought response plan for the agricultural sector of 40 Colorado counties. That remains in effect for some of those counties. The 2018 water year ended on September 30th as the warmest and second driest of 124 years of record. So we are hopeful that we will pull out of that, but we're continuing to watch, and the Drought Task Force and the Agricultural Impact Task Force is going to continue to monitor conditions, and I'll give you updates on that accordingly. Also, as you recall, a decrease in water loss in the water plan was one of the actions in Colorado's water plan. We take that really seriously, and staff has been focused on that. So Kevin Reedy has started the Colorado Water Loss Initiative, which will culminate in a 2-year training and technical assistance program for water providers across Colorado. So Kevin has already convened a small advisory group to weigh in on the scope of that and assist with the development of the programming. We're very excited about that. The contract was awarded and work has started, and approximately 60 water providers have already signed up so far for this training in spring of 2019. That makes us really excited because we know that that's where we can make an impact. There has been, on other news, going to a little bit of the Gunnison Basin as part of CWCB's water forecasting partnerships. Some snowtail sites were installed in late October. And so we're hoping that this will help better characterize snowpack and provide more snow data for water supply forecasting. It's in collaboration, the project's in collaboration with the Upper Gunnison River Water Conservancy District, the National Center for Atmospheric Research, and NRCS Snow Survey Program, along with the CWCB. So Joe Busto, who's not here today, but it is still working on this along with Andrew Rickert. So this has been helpful. On to what people want to hear me talk about and are completely focused on. If you looked at the agenda, I wanted to talk a little bit about the DCP and demand management, not getting too far into it because it is one of our agenda items. The board, as you all recall, the board directed us in late 2017. So this isn't a new effort to really begin a comprehensive outreach effort regarding the DCP and demand management and really reach out to all of our stakeholders, water users, tribes, and water managers. So this has been going on since late 2017. And the CWCB took that outreach effort, and that really allowed us to continue to identify and evaluate possible options for avoiding an involuntary compact curtailment, which is consistent with Colorado's water plan goal identified in Chapter 9.1 that states, we will support strategies to maximize the use of compact water while actively avoiding a Colorado River compact deficit. So trying to not mix the DCP and the demand management. In regards to the DCP, on October 9th, the 7 basin states collectively released all those documents. So this is what's happened since the last board meeting. They released the documents that would implement the terms agreed by the upper and lower basin states as part of their respective DCPs. We hosted a webinar that was led by James Eklund, our commissioner, Karen Kwan, and myself, and we got into those documents. After that, the board gave us direction on those documents and said, continue your outreach. I think we've done a pretty good job with that, and when I say pretty good, I mean fantastic. But also to continue some work on the demand management. So we resumed our aggressive outreach, and since that direction, I want to make folks aware that Brent's at the Arkansas Roundtable today, but since the October special meeting, the webinar had 260 participants and then 171 additional YouTube views. We've been at the Southwest Basin Roundtable. We've been at the Metro Basin Roundtable. We were at the IBCC fall meeting in Durango, like Director Stolp had mentioned. We've been at the Water Bank Working Group. Just last week, I was at the Colorado Mesa University Water Forum with some participants from other upper basin states and lower basin states. We've been in Northwest COG. We have made it to just about all the roundtables, Front Range and West Slope caucuses, board meetings, seminars, and any water policy forums that they will allow us to speak at, we get to. So all of those meetings have been well attended, and the conversations and questions that came out of that really directed what our work and what the board next directed us to do and look at a policy as it relates to demand management. So we took the comments from the board and the comments from all of that outreach and pulled it up into what we consider a policy statement that encompasses all of that. That's going to be agenda item, sorry about that. I believe it's 20. Yep, on 20. So public comment will be available then. But we're still going to continue our public discussion about demand management, its feasibility, and how it could be operated in a way that protects existing uses in Colorado. So it's consistent with Colorado's water plan, and we are going to continue the work on that. Other exciting news in Compact is the Arkansas River Compact Administration. We'll be holding the annual meeting and several committee meetings December 6th and 7th in Garden City, Kansas. And it looks like, and I might let Director Goebel go into more of this, or even in January, we'll hopefully be able to pass a permanent resolution that allows water from the Highline Canal to be used permanently as a source in the pool at John Martin Reservoir. So this has been a priority not only of CPW, but of CWCB and the State Engineer's Office. So Kevin Ryan, Bill Tyner, Brett Ackerman, all those people are working incredibly hard on this, and I think we're doing some good work. I always like to finish off with some of the good news of what's happening internally at the agency. I don't know if we can count and compare to other years, but this might be a year of awards. We seem to be getting them a lot lately. So CWCB was recently awarded an award for work for the flood recovery program in partnership with NRCS, and that was related to the 2013 floods in northern Colorado and El Paso County. That was a $60 million project and program to administer flood recovery and water restoration projects in the flood affected area. So that was called the Emergency Watershed Protection Program. So we got an award for that, and that's a pretty big deal. So I'd like to thank Kevin Hauk's section for that. And that work was extremely difficult, and to sponsor and then administer those federal funds is not an easy task. So they deserve a little bit, even more than an award for that, because it was a lot of work. So also Kevin Reedy is receiving an award on November 16th. He's receiving the Conservation Hero Award from Resource Central for his work in conservation. And so Kevin and all the staff at CWCB have helped Resource Central with a lot of past projects, including residential and commercial audits. Those audits directly go towards the goals in Colorado's water plan. So we are proud of Kevin Reedy, and he'll be receiving that. I guess it's tomorrow, right? And then in other hero moments, Twee Patton has co-authored a publication with USGS titled Flood Inundation Maps for South Platte River at Fort Morgan, Colorado, 2018. So this report really provides the digital flood inundation maps for various flows in the Fort Morgan area. If you're into that, you should read it, but then thank Twee for doing that. We don't require that anybody publish, but it's a nice thing when they do. On some staffing notes, Doug Mahan is here. Doug, will you wave? Come out here, Doug, so everyone can see you. Doug is Mr. Above and Beyond, and so you might know that Heinz is retiring. We don't own Heinz; he's part of. You may think we do, but Heinz is in another department, and so we're really looking at ways we can be efficient within the agency, and ways that we can. There will be no blips in our work, and so we've looked internally wherever we can, and Doug's always been willing to step up. So he is learning some of the technical pieces so we can always have backup, and he has already had some excitement this morning and proved very valuable. So I just wanted to make sure, sometimes these folks are behind the scenes and they're in our office and you don't know who they are. Doug makes us look good often, and so I wanted to thank him for being here. Kara Shiel is here. I mentioned that we had a new employee coming in at our last board meeting, but she's actually present, and she's working on water availability analysis for the in-stream flow appropriations. And so I wanted to just make sure everybody got to physically see her. And then also Dawn West is retiring December 31st. So I would be remiss if I didn't cry in public. So a little bit of Dawn's history is we poached Dawn from DWR. We get some really good people from DWR, and we're not above that. We will do that again if we need to. And he started with CWCB in 2009, and he's really played a major part in negotiating and resolving hundreds of water court cases. So thank you for that, Dawn. Vivian is here. I've talked about Vivian. She's our front desk person, so if you come into our office, Vivian Pinelli, right? And I sometimes get last names wrong, but Vivian's the face of the agency. And often, again, we forget that these people are who make us look good. So when people come into the office, they're the first person you see. It's a very important job. And I think that's all I have for staffing.
All right, any questions for Director Mitchell? Okay, we'll move on. Director Ryan, State Engineer.
Chairman Yan, and I'll start by just acknowledging the poaching comment from Director Mitchell. Director Mitchell and I get along so well, but everything's subject to change. I'm going to try to be brief because I've invited a guest today. I want to comment on the subsurface water symposium that Dr. Stolp and I were at yesterday, and I want to underscore a couple of his comments. I spoke about the regulatory aspects of aquifer storage and recovery, and afterward, a young student from CSU, from the campus news station, television station, asked to do an on-camera interview, and I accepted that, but I'll just mention that was slightly more daunting than 9 News for some reason. But I did that, and she had a good question, and it was about why are we talking about this today? And it was a good reminder. It caused me to go back and think about, we have a looming gap. We need to address demand. We have a water plan. I talked about the CWCB's effort to develop a water plan and how storage is part of that, and underground storage is part of that. And it was a good reminder for me. We talk about it so much, but there's a logical sequence why these things are important, and I hope I was able to convey that to some of the students as they see that. It was just a great symposium, though. I also want to just mention a sort of an outstanding item, especially for Director Gallagher. A little more than a year ago, or maybe about 18 months ago, DWR created an internal guide on the administration of water rights on the point of waste. Waste is a statutory issue, it's statutorily defined, and it's an important administration component. And we did do this internal guide, but we made it a worst kept secret and allowed people to see it. And it raised some concern, primarily with some people in both the Yampa River Basin and the North Platte. And I've worked with Erin Light, the division engineer. You all heard from her at the last meeting. We've worked to make that something that we believe is less concerning, I guess is a good word for now. And we're going to be up again in your basin, Director Gallagher, Friday to meet with both folks in the Yampa and in the North Platte. So I'm looking forward to that. It's great conversation to have with those folks. Want to mention that I've probably mentioned before, I and some of the Denver staff just finished a round of what we call the fall meetings in our 7 division offices. It's a great time for me to get out and see all of our 260 employees and then employees in the Denver office, but it's especially a treat to go to these division offices. They hold their fall meetings where they bring everybody, including the water commissioners, into the office. There's great discussion on administration issues and so on. But I did something a little differently this year, and we spent some time talking about the Division of Water Resources. As an agency, the Division of Water Resources, what our role is, what's important that we do, and And we were able to drill down and talk to the employees about what motivates you to do what you do. Why are we doing this? Why do we have a mission that says what it says? And we just had great input, all 7 divisions in the Denver office. And I suppose I'm directing this to the basin directors. You all have DWR employees in your basins that are not just there for a paycheck. They are so committed to their community. They're a part of their community, and I think you all could testify to some of that. They have great passion. We talked about this pursuit of the heart that they do. And I know I always like to talk about our employees, and I'm probably going extra heavy on it, but I was so moved by the participation we had in these discussions about their passion. And I suppose to one point for Director Hawkins, you may be aware that in your division you have an 81-year-old deputy water commissioner. So let that sink in for a minute. 81 years old and a full-time employee of the Division of Water Resources. Not just a sentimental favorite, but actually out there doing the work. That's passion. Can't say enough about that. This effort in the fall meetings was not just to feel good. It was to help me and our leadership team as we continue to develop our long-range plan. We're updating our long-range plan, and we just got great input from that. Great time out there in our fall meetings. I'm going to move on. I mentioned we had a guest, but I'll just mention also that we're in the South Platte Basin right now, and we're not only in the South Platte Basin, we're in Division 1. And Division 1 is not just the South Platte. We also have the Republican River, and we have the Laramie River. And all that administration is overseen by our division engineer, Corey DeAngelis. Division 1 is interesting, like many of the other basins. We have, if you go up into South Park, we have high altitude mines that have water flowing out of them that has been determined to be non-tributary. That's an interesting administration choice for us. We have accounting of water through 2 major flood control structures. We have significant irrigation ditch diversions just barely north of town. We have high groundwater issues that are very difficult to address. We have at least 3 storage projects that are new or increased storage going on right now. We have a basin that's highly dependent on return flows, as Director Jan will often remind us. And I didn't mean anything by that. It's a very good point. And we have just a lot of contentious water court activity in Division 1 when it comes to changing water rights, taking water out of ag. And it's just sometimes can seem overwhelming. It's great to have a division engineer that has his hand on all this and does a great job. And if I could, Chairman Yan and Director Mitchell, ask Corey DeAngelis to just come up and introduce himself, and make a couple comments.
Welcome, Corey. Just state your name for the record.
My name's Corey DeAngelis. As Kevin gave that great introduction, I'm the Division 1 engineer. I started as the Division 1 engineer July 1st of this year, so fairly new. I took over for David Nettles, which most of you know and are familiar with. He retired after 32 years of service, over 20 years in Division 1, so a lot of knowledge went out the door. I'm humbled and honored to take over for Dave. We've got a very passionate and great crew with Division Water Resources and Division 1. Just wanted to give a snapshot of what Kevin said to follow up on that, but our area is basically from Monument on the south to Wyoming, the Divide, Kansas, and Nebraska. So it's a very large geographical area. We got a lot of different things going on and a lot of things happening. Just to highlight on what Kevin said, we were involved with the Laramie River Agreement with Wyoming, South Platte Compact, and the Republican River Compact. We administer in coordination with other agencies in our Denver office, State Engineer's Office, surface water, groundwater, tributary, and non-tributary. We have a lot of augmentation plans, a lot of demand, and as most people know, it's become very more and more complicated over the years with the limited resource. So we've been undertaking an effort for some time in Division 1 to ramp up technology, our use of technology, our relationships with the water users and their technology to make administration more real time, more visible and transparent. And it's gone real well since we're in Water District 7, the Clear Creek Basin, just on the edge of it. An example of that, over the last 3 years, we've installed over 60 cellular and telemetered diversion and return structure sites to Clear Creek, really changing our administration, making it real time and transparent. And the best part of that is also seeing the relationships of the water users on Clear Creek improve. They're now working together. Everything's real time and transparent. And it's been a pleasure to watch that evolve. We have a lot going on in the South Platte Basin, Republican River Compact rules. As Kevin said, high groundwater study efforts. We also have what we call our irrigation year, not to mention another year, but that started November 1st. It was relatively dry in 2018, but we're pretty fortunate in South Platte Basin, but we're hoping for snow so we can continue that trend. But again, thank you for having me. Just wanted to introduce myself. I talked to a lot of people on the phone, but it's good to meet everybody face to face.
All right. Any questions for Corey? Well, I just wanted to say thanks for all your work. You have a big job. I don't know if people can understand, because I've been at the North Sterling for 26 years now, and the changes that have taken place are just enormous. So you have all these well augmentation plans. So you have thousands of wells that are accounted for on a monthly time step, but they almost need to know it daily. And then you have all these recharge projects that have taken. So for instance, in the wintertime, we would have had filling of 6 reservoirs in our area. That's no longer the case. So we have the filling of reservoirs still, but then you have augmentation plans and recharge projects that start kicking in. And so you might have a ditch that never diverted water in the wintertime. All of a sudden, they're diverting water, so they keep track of that, plus several recharge ponds along that, and those are all separate recordings that they must keep track of. So it's probably tenfold the amount of work that you do since when I started, on old paper charts compared to what you do now. And so it's a lot to get the end of the year information all done, and you have a really good set of employees, especially in Division 1, that I appreciate a lot.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, over 1.5 million acre feet of diversions and approximately 300,000 acre feet a recharge year out of mini structures. So again, as Kevin mentioned, passionate employees and relationships with passionate water users. But it is a lot of work.
So thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Anything else, Kevin? Or?
That's the end of my report. Thank you. Unless
right.
there's questions.
Any questions for Director Ryan? I just had one thing. I did actually read through the internal guideline for waste since it was out there. And actually, I thought it was, it's something we deal with on the South Platte a lot. So I thought it was well written and reasonable, flexible, and it encouraged working with the water users. So I appreciated it. So on the first read anyway, it seemed pretty good. And the changes that you were suggesting seem reasonable to me. So
Thank you for
well
that.
done. All right, we'll continue on. We have, get my glasses on, Division of Parks and Wildlife, Jackie Corday, filling in for Bob Rochide.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jackie Corday, head of the CPW's Water Resources section, and I'm filling in for Director Broscheid today. He's at the CPW leadership team meeting, which always happens the day before the Parks and Wildlife Commission, and that's a 2-day meeting that's going to be in Burlington. So sorry he wasn't able to be here today. One of the first things I just wanted to announce is this is Jay Skinner's last official board meeting for Parks and Wildlife. He is retiring on December 31st, so this is his last time, 33 years working for the state. And to borrow Becky's word, we did not borrow, but stole or poach, poached him from CWCB in 1987. So that works, I guess, a few different ways here. And thank goodness we've hired a fantastic replacement, Katie Birch, and Jay and Katie have been working really hard these past 5 months all around the state, doing a lot of travel for the in-stream flow program. And so we're excited to have her. And thank goodness Jay is not departing the Front Range. He'll be here to answer Katie's questions that she'll continue to have. So the other thing I wanted to let you know about is something that CPW, our water section, and other staff around the state are going to be working on hard this winter. We're calling it low flow planning. Basically, after what we went through this summer, which was an incredibly stressful and difficult summer for a lot of different CPW staff, dealing with the low flows, we thought this winter would be really important to start doing some proactive planning and look at the stream reaches that are most important to us, mostly from aquatic biology perspective, and look to see if there are opportunities to keep water in the stream when in-stream flow is not enough. Either there isn't an in-stream flow water right, or it's too junior to keep the stream wet. And so we're going to be working on that. We have basically 3 phases. Katie Birch is going to be reaching out to all our aquatic biologists. She already has started that process, seeking input on what are our priorities if we had to choose which ones to work on to keep wet. And phase 2 will then be an analysis of what are all the different types of tools and different possibilities for keeping segments, those priority segments, running. And then phase 3 will be reaching out to our partners, which obviously includes CWCB staff to brainstorm, Colorado Water Trust to brainstorm, and TU Trout Unlimited, and others like that have the same interest and goal of keeping segments wet whenever it's possible. So I just wanted to let you know those efforts will be going on over the whole winter, and hopefully by the spring, who knows what we'll bring next year, but we hope to be ready for it as best as we can. And then yesterday, I attended the Water Availability Task Force meeting, and as Becky mentioned, there was some summary of where we're still at, which was 72% drought in the state overall. But I wanted to share with you this beautiful picture, this beautiful map that just almost brought tears to my eyes, because I'm so tired of red and dark orange and burgundy throughout the state. And this was a map, the first time I got to see blue and green, and it's showing you that this snow that we've had and this precip over the past October and into November is just looking, like I said, beautiful. You could see the percentages for some basins are just really high. 170 for the South Platte, 163 for the Arkansas, and throughout the state, it's just looking at least a lot better than it did this time last year. So it was just a nice piece of good news to head into the winter with. And that's it for my report then.
All right, thank you for that uplifting photo. I like it. Any questions for Jackie? All right, well, we'll continue on. Mike Broad with Water and Power.
Is anybody concerned about that note that we always see that's been put up there for the last 6 months or so, that this map may not be available in the future? Is there something we can do to fix that? Maybe that's a rhetorical question, but good morning, Mr. Chair, board members, Director Randall, Director Mitchell. My name is Mike Broad. I'm with the Colorado Water Resources and Power Development Authority. I thought I'd do something a little bit different. I'll try to be quick. I know you're probably behind schedule here, so. But the two state revolving funds, I know everybody's been struggling with funding. Actually, the two SRF programs benefited this year by a congressional appropriation, and both programs received an additional $300 million nationally. So our wastewater grant went from 10 million to 12.5 on the drinking water side, because we also increased our allocation percentage at the national level. Our grant went from about 14.5 million to almost 22 million. So a bit of good news on the water infrastructure front. So, and then sort of a, did you know that the two SRFs on the drinking water side actually funds 13 FTE at the water quality control division. On the wastewater side, it's over 12. So there's a little, did you know? Most people don't know that and aren't aware of it. So we are coming up with our new eligibility list. I know they're going to be big. We do a survey. Actually, the division does the survey. We put together our joint resolutions that we take through the legislature each year. So hopefully at the next meeting, I'll have an update for you on the size and scale of those numbers. They grow exponentially every year, it seems. I put in bold and italicized that under the Animas La Plata project, we're actually received numbers on final cost allocations. That has been a long awaited process, and I'm going to be working with Kirk and other folks from the Water Conservation Board to sort of review how they determine those final cost allocations. Our allocation, which is being purchased by most of it, 1,900 acre feet of depletion, was purchased by Durango. The remainder of 700 is being purchased over time by the Animas La Plata Water Conservancy District. So our final cost allocation was an additional $401,000. So we'll be working with other folks that have received their allocations to see how we want to proceed and take care of that. Because the project cost, from the original estimate on ALP of $300 million, his final cost was just shy of $600 million. So, you know, as with most federal projects, that number really creeps up. So just also want to mention, and I know that there's going to be an effort to look at replacement, maybe not complete replacement, but other alternatives for revenue sources besides the severance tax. And I know under the water plan, when we wrote the finance section and I helped participate in that, there are some alternative ideas for trying to find different streams of revenue to help fund water projects. So, I'll work with Director Mitchell, and if we can keep that ball moving forward, because 112 didn't pass, but it probably hasn't gone away for good, I'm sure. Legislative matters, just wanted to mention that Governor Hickenlooper has reappointed Bob Wolf from the southwest part of the state. And of course, you all know he's the president of the Southwestern District and the Animas La Plata Water Conservancy District. So, and then also a new appointment of Chris Treese from the River District to represent the Colorado River Basin. So I'll be working to get those two appointments confirmed in January when they settle all the committee assignments. And then one other item I wanted to mention, this is kind of exciting news. I don't know how many people are aware of it. Maybe if you're involved with the Water Congress quite a bit, you'll know that both of our leases in our building were coming up. And so with Doug Kemper and myself, we worked together. We're going to lease the whole 6th floor where we're currently. They're moving the occupant that's up there now. Doug and the Water Congress is going to sublease that office space, and we're going to expand the conference room that we have. We're going to expand that to make it useful for state affairs and other meetings and share the cost of that. There's no point in us having two separate conference rooms, so we thought it might be a good idea to share the cost of that. So I'm kind of excited. It's a 10-year deal, and they'll start construction pretty soon. As soon as they get that other occupant located to the 4th floor, until that time, they'll stay up on the 7th floor, and they'll have your State Affairs Committee meetings up there until we get it completed. But I did want to mention that. I thought it was kind of exciting that we're going to work together with the Water Congress on that. So I'll leave it at that and ask for any questions.
Any questions for Mike? All right.
You guys.
Thank you. And backing up just one quick second while you set up, I just wanted to thank Jay Skinner and Katie. Well, Jay for all of his years of work, and I really appreciate it, Jay, for all you've done for us. And Jay and Katie last month showed us how they make in-stream flow recommendations. So they did a field demonstration on the river at Steamboat Springs, so I really appreciated that. It makes sense to me now, and I think I was there, and Director Trick and Director Gallagher all watched how that was done, so I appreciated that too.
I have a moment?
You betcha.
So I often start my story with, in 1985, on Valentine's Day, I was hired by CWCB, and that's when the love affair started. And, in 87, I moved from CWCB to Division of Wildlife to play with real water instead of paper water. And I spent 15 years working on the in-stream flow program, took a 10-year break, and was in Jackie's position for about 10 years working on our water program. And then after the merge, I fell back into what I think is the best damn job in the agency, which is this in-stream flow job. And, the in-stream flow program is one where you get a real opportunity to do real habitat protection and really have an impact on the water resource and the aquatic resource in the state. I've had a great ride here with present and past board members, staff, CPW staff, DOW staff. This water community is a great community. And these are relationships that I will cherish my entire life. So, like I said, it's been a great ride. I won't be far away. The program is in capable hands with Katie, and I'm not going to unlist my phone number or anything like that. So, it's truly been a pleasure with all of you. So,
Thank you, Jay. All right, agenda item 6, an update on the request for water acquisitions. Linda Bassi.
Thank you. Jay almost made me cry, but not quite. Number 6, agenda item 6, request for water acquisition pilot process update. I'm Linda Bassi with the Stream and Lake Protection Section. I am just up here to introduce Karen Wogsland. She's the Director of Programs for the Colorado Water Trust. As you all know, we embarked on a new process this year, starting in January, the request for water acquisition pilot process. Karen is here to give you an overview of how it worked this year and how many offers were received and how the processing has been going. So with that, I will turn it over to Karen.
All right. Welcome, Karen. If you want to state your name and who you're with.
Yes, thank you. I'm Karen Wogsland. I'm the Director of Programs with Colorado Water Trust, and thank you for the introduction, Linda. I hope all of you know who the Colorado Water Trust is, but in case you don't, let me let you know that we're a nonprofit organization dedicated to restoring stream flows to Colorado rivers in need. We were founded in 2001 to add capacity to the CWCB's acquisition program. And in our lifetime, so far we've added a little bit over than 32,000 acre feet of water to 323 miles of rivers in Colorado. I hope I got those statistics right, Mickey. And we're very proud of that. We work very closely with Linda Bassi and her team, which is just a great relationship, and we're very, very thankful for that. I'd also like to introduce a few staff members from the Water Trust that are here today. We have Ann Janicki, New Wave, our water transaction specialist, and Mickey O'Hara, water resources engineer. And they're just fantastic to work with. Like Linda said, I'm here to report back to you on how the request for water acquisitions pilot process went this year. And so I wanted to explain a little bit about it in case you forgot. It might be a reminder, it might be new for some folks, and then I kind of tell you how it all went down. I always go the wrong direction the first time. Ah, green light. Ah, got it. I did. I went backwards. So the pilot process was proposed by the Water Trust and developed jointly by CWCB staff and the Water Trust. And it's essentially as a strategic approach to in-stream flow water acquisitions that was similar to the in-stream flow new appropriation process. And what I mean by that is just kind of adding a front door and a structure to the process. So what we found was that both of our organizations would get like random phone calls throughout the year from water right owners wanting to offer their water to the acquisition programs, and it was just difficult to manage. And so I want to stress that it's the same old acquisition program, but just with a structure for the process. So that's what the process was about, was a more structured approach to conserve resources, enable prioritization, and then provide a more focused effort to the acquisition program. All types of acquisitions were part of this process, permanent to temporary. So the goals were to inform water right owners about voluntary market-based opportunities, to use their rights to benefit rivers. And what we found in our work is that there's a lot of confusion between the new appropriation system and the acquisition of senior water rights. So this was really a good way to sort of try to make that clearer when we're out in the community. It was also to invite voluntary water right offers from willing water right owners and provide a user-friendly, clear process of working with the CWCB and the Water Trust for acquisitions. And then, of course, ultimately, we want to add flows to river reaches and facilitate the implementation of Colorado's water plan. So the process itself it's basically a statewide request for water acquisitions. And then we also established some minimum water right criteria. For example, water rights needed to be greater than 0.5 CFS for a direct flow, and they needed to be absolute, of course, and then greater than 20 acre feet of storage. And they also had to have a good record of use. So we established some minimum criteria, established deadlines. So we had a deadline this year of April 30th. And then what would happen is the Water Trust would do a free confidential review of the water right for potential in-stream flow opportunities. We committed to get back to owners by July 31st. With potential offers, or if the water right just simply didn't work in the program. Is that focused for you all, or is it my glasses? It's kind of small. This is just a schematic of the timeline, essentially. So we launched the program last year in January at Water Congress at the In-Stream Flow workshop. So that workshop has always been for new appropriations. And so this past year, we actually carved out some time to talk about the acquisition program and to outline the timelines and how we would process applications. So then after launch, until the deadline in April, we did a bunch of outreach. That was that education component I kind of talked about. And then on April 30th, of course, was the offer deadline. And then between that period of time and the July date, Water Trust did this confidential review of water rights. After that deadline, we kind of move forward into a more detailed due diligence and investigation of the water rights that appear to be suitable for the program, and kind of move into sort of a transaction, developing the transaction and the project moving forward. The outreach that we did was 3 public presentations. We think we had an attendance of about 275. We did a statewide webinar and had about 55 people on that. The CWCB did outreach at their regular basin roundtable meetings. We blasted out emails, newsletters, blogs, and the graph on the bottom here is the number of website visits that came onto our website. So do I have a, it's not a hydrograph, it's, but what was kind of cool for us is that we could see like the outcome of our efforts. So you can see on the very left, January is nothing. The workshop kind of get a spike. The webinar, another huge spike. The Confluence newsletter came out. We got some more hits. So it made us feel good that people were taking a look at the website and learning more about it. So what happened? We got 25 water rights offered from 21 separate entities. We got offers from 5 different water divisions. We did not get anything from Division 2 or Division 3. The graph here shows basically the offers that we got in each month. So a big spike there in February, which is during the outreach period. And then another spike of offers came in April. And then we did get offers after the deadline, and no, the doors are not closed. We're trying to create process and a better way to manage all these offers, but if your water right comes in after April 30th, we are certainly interested. The divisions that we got the most offers from was 5, followed by 4, and then 6. The decreed uses were mostly irrigation water from these offers. So where are we? Oh, that's better. Okay, it wasn't me. Thank you. I was like, I know what it says, so that works. So what happened? We implemented one project. It was a water conservation project from the Ferraro Ditch, owned by the BLM. It's decreed for 1.95 CFS, and it was able to restore flows this season to Devil's Creek and the Lake Fork of the Gunnison River below Lake City. So that was exciting for us to get one project out the door. From this program. We've got 4 other water rights that are that have moved on to more due diligence and additional investigation, and we expect project development. 2 other water rights are hanging out in the initial investigation stage. 9 water rights are on hold. So what that means is that we think they have promise. We think there's an opportunity with them, but the time isn't ripe for a variety of different reasons, and we don't want to let them go, but we're not moving forward full blast on them. We declined 9 water rights. We decline water rights because there's a significant period of non-use. The amount was really too small to make any measurable difference in the stream. This is an important one, the tool limitations. I have a couple examples. If, say, a water right owner wants to do a short-term lease, but there's no underlying decreed junior in-stream flow right that's short, it won't work. It's not an opportunity. So that's one example of the limitations. Another example is if we had a water right owner that wanted to do a water conservation program, but they lived in Division 7, that also isn't an opportunity. So we take a look at the water rights, the health of the water rights, all sorts of other different due diligence things, and match it with sort of the legal mechanism to make a transaction happen. Another reason we would decline a water right is that it was just too.
We got a question, Director Hawkins. She needs a microphone.
Thanks, Karen. I wanted to make sure I understood that last part of the tool limitation. Did I understand correctly that the fact that we don't have a tool to protect consumptive use in Division 7 led to a decline of water rights acquisitions offers during this process?
Not during this particular batch of water rights, the 25 that we got this year.
So it did not?
No, it didn't. But that is a limitation. If we had had one, we could not have done a water conservation program.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So in terms of type of transaction, what we have in this year's crop is one potential permanent acquisition, potentially 2 short-term leases, and then potentially 4 water conservation programs. That's what I have. Thank you all for your time. Thank you all for the work that you do for the state, and thanks for your support of the Water Trust. And if you have any questions.
All right. Thanks, Karen, for sharing that update with us. Are there any questions from the board? Director Hawkins.
Did you make any recommendations on whether to do this process again?
Yes, we are working with Linda and her staff on what 2019 program looks like. So yes, in fact, we just met yesterday. And so I think it'll look similar, but we'll, hopefully improve it. And
well, great. I really appreciated the presentation today.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Thanks, Karen. We'll move on to agenda item 7. 2019 recommended in-stream flow appropriations. Rob Veal.
Good morning. For the record, Rob Veal, CWCB staff. As Director Yon stated, this is agenda item 7, notice of 2019 in-stream flow recommended appropriations in water divisions 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7. This is an informational item only that provides notice of the 22 recommended stream segments that staff may bring to the board in January 2019 with a recommendation that the board form its intent to appropriate ISF water rights. No board action is required at this time. As you may have noticed last week too, a notice was sent out to the in-stream flow subscription mailing list indicating these 22 streams may be moving forward as well. Staff continues to conduct outreach throughout the state with the recommending entities and continues to work on these recommendations for January. That's all I have.
Wow, you are fast.
Well, I figured I'd try to get back on, back on schedule.
Right.
It's just an informational item just for the public to be noticed. I don't think there's anyone here from the public that wanted to speak about these.
Okay.
But I can answer any questions if you have them.
Any questions okay. Director George.
It looks like in thinking back over each year we've been doing this, that this year BLM has significantly fewer requests than they've had in the past. Is that right? Am I remembering history right, or has something changed?
No, you are correct. The BLM is recommending less in-stream flow recommendations, but they're more complex. So they're taking longer, even though there's less of them. We're having a harder time processing them because their water systems that they're in are so complex. So that's why moving forward, a lot of these are only a few from the BLM this year.
So there's nothing really changed with BLM other than it's just getting harder.
Yeah, it's just up to, there's nothing that has changed significantly. It's just the BLM staff.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Rob? Thanks, Rob.
Thanks.
All right, we'll continue on. Agenda item 8. Linda? Colorado River Water Conservation District lease of Rudeye Reservoir water.
Good morning. Linda Bassi with the Stream and Lake Protection Section. This is an action item. And number 8, River District lease of Rudeye water for in-stream flow use with an additional location of use. Why isn't this working? This isn't working. Oh, is it turned on? Okay. All right. So at the July board meeting this year, the board approved a lease of 3,500 acre-feet of Rudeye water from the River District to supplement winter flows in the Frying Pan River. Because the use of that leased water will only occur under specified flow or weather conditions from January 1st to March 31st, it became apparent that it's possible that we might not use the full 3,500 acre-feet of water by March 31st. And the terms of the district's lease that's governed by its water marketing policy is a so-called take-and-pay contract where we pay for the water whether we use it or not. And so you all expressed some concerns about that. After the July board meeting, we talked with the River District staff and Roaring Fork Conservancy and came up with another use, which would be to use any remaining leased water in the 15-mile reach of the Colorado River. And so we gave you your first look at that at the September board meeting. And so we would be coordinating with CPW, the Roaring Fork Conservancy, the Bureau of Reclamation, and the Fish and Wildlife Service on the timing and rate of releases for this additional use. I think you probably all know where everything is, but Rudeye's up here. From January 1st to March 31st, we'd use it in the Frying Pan River in-stream flow. And then after that, if there's remaining water, send it down to the 15-mile reach. So the board's first look in December triggered a 20-day window for any member of the public to request a hearing, and no hearing was requested, so that means that you can take final action on this proposal today. We've requested recommendations from the usual suspects, Parks and Wildlife, BLM, Forest Service, and provided all the required notices. Colorado Parks and Wildlife's written recommendation is attached to your memo as attachment 2, and they strongly support this proposal. So the water proposed for the lease is any water remaining of that 3,500 acre-feet after March 31st, 2019. We have to switch to a different source of water in Rudeye under a different Bureau of Reclamation contract. The water that we would be leasing from January 1st to March 31st is under a contract that expressly authorizes supplementing winter in-stream flows on the Frying Pan. That contract didn't allow then for the additional use on the 15-mile reach after March 31st. So the River District has several pools of water and contracts in Rudeye, so we are going to use water under a different Bureau contract for the 15-mile reach use. And that use could happen from April 1st through December 31st. It's really governed mainly by how much water we actually have to use. And so we would be benefiting the natural environment on the 15-mile reach, which provides critical habitat for the 4 Colorado River endangered fish. And so from April 1st to June 30th, we would use the leased water to preserve the natural environment by helping to meet or reduce shortfalls to Fish and Wildlife Service flow recommendations in the 15-mile reach. They have varying flow recommendations throughout the year. And typically in April, or frequently in April, there's what's referred to as the April hole, which is super dry conditions. The irrigators start diverting, and there's a lot of demand for water, and the runoff hasn't come down yet. And so hopefully we might be able to use some of this water to help address that. From July 1st to September 30th, we could use this leased water to supplement our existing decreed in-stream flows in the 15-mile reach to preserve the environment. And then using water above those decreed in-stream flow rates to improve the natural environment, again, by helping to meet those flow recommendations of the Fish and Wildlife Service. From October 1st to December 31st, we would use the water to preserve the environment by helping meet those flow recommendations. We just have a decreed in-stream flow between July 1st and September 30th. So it's a kind of a little patchwork of uses, but they all do meet the requirements to preserve and improve. So the proposed way we would acquire this would be adding this source, citing back to that Bureau contract, the second Bureau contract, and the use of leased water to the lease agreement that the board approved in July. And there's a laundry list of what that agreement would address, timing and request for releases, payment, acknowledgement that the lease will be implemented in accordance with the Frying Pan Arkansas Act and operating principles. That is to address some concerns expressed by Southeastern Water Conservancy District. And we also would include a commitment to coordinate on releases and resulting flow rates to address Frying Pan River anglers' concerns and the concerns of other stakeholders on the river. And then any other terms that the parties deem necessary. The River District has sent us, we sent them our state form, and they've sent back a revised version. So we're going to, after this meeting, assuming the board approves this, we're going to go back and figure that all out and get it moving, get it executed, and moving through the state controller approval process so that we can start using that water January 1st. A couple of the in-stream flow rule 6 factors. This is a lease of water stored in priority and then released for delivery and use. So the following factors are not at issue: historical use and return flows and material injury to existing water rights. This lease would promote maximum utilization of the state's waters by allowing the stored water to be released and used for the beneficial use of preserving and improving the natural environment. It would support recovery of the endangered fish, and it's then available for subsequent use downstream of the in-stream flow reach. We've consulted with the Interstate, Federal, and Water Information section, and this proposal doesn't negatively impact any interstate compact. We can stack this leased water with our existing in-stream flow right from the July 1st to September 30th timeframe to achieve a greater level of protection for the environment. We have confirmed with the Division 5 Division Engineer that this proposal is administrable. I think in the memo it was still preliminary, but since the drafting of that memo, we have confirmed that from Alan Martellero. So the anticipated benefits are the uses I described earlier. I'm not going to read this again to you. And there's no additional cost to CWCB for using this remaining leased water because it was included in the initial cost of the lease, which is $228,775. And we will pay for that with the funds authorized in the construction fund for in-stream flow water acquisitions. So I've addressed the Southeastern concerns, and last Thursday we had a public meeting in Basalt to present this proposal, and we had about 20 people at the meeting, and it was a really interesting discussion. They really stressed a need for coordination on the releases because they're worried about low flows. And when we've exercised the Ute lease in the past, we've heard concerns about high flows from the anglers. So there's a lot of competing interests. This became clear at this meeting. It was a really great discussion. A lot of the people who live along the river are very interested and really care about what's happening out on the river, and we heard a lot about it. There was a person there who said that she knew of people that were willing to buy more water to address low flows in the fall, which is not something that this lease won't be used to address that, but they would really like to work with us to find some ways to address that. So stay tuned. Hopefully we can figure something out with them to help meet some of these other interests. We did forward you a comment email from Mr. Gary Fisher that just came this morning. I also received a text comment from a kayaker in Aspen, Colorado, who said the more the merrier on water, that he would prefer flows above 350 CFS. So there are a lot of different needs. So the bottom line from this meeting is that rather than say that we will limit releases to 300, instead, I think it's better to commit to coordinating with the Roaring Fork Conservancy is in direct communication with the angling community, so we can get that perspective in a more organized fashion. And then, of course, we'll coordinate with Fish and Wildlife Service and Colorado Parks and Wildlife, because they are monitoring the status of the fishery on the frying pan. The approval from the Bureau of Reclamation of this lease, we anticipate a finalized letter from the Bureau by December 1st. So that's moving along nicely. With that, I am ready to give you staff recommendation. Should I just go ahead?
Yeah, that would be fine.
Okay. So staff recommends that the board amend its approval of the Colorado River Water Conservation District lease of Rudai water to include the additional use of leased water in the 15-mile reach from April 1st to December 31st, 2019, subject to the following conditions. Staff will coordinate with the River District, CPW, Roaring Fork Conservancy, Fish and Wildlife Service, and Bureau of Reclamation on the timing and rate of releases for use in the 15-mile reach. And CWCB staff will consult and coordinate weekly with CPW on proposed releases to minimize impacts to the fishery on the Frying Pan River below Rudai.
All right. Director George.
Well, this is really good work. It seems a lot harder than it ought to be. The concept is right. You're being smart about utilizing resources we have. You're reaching out to work with our partners. These are all the right things for us to do. It looks like you've gone the extra distance with everyone who's up there and has an interest. That makes it hard, but it's also the right thing to do. And I thank you for that. And I think that's the model we like for this organization. So kudos to all of you. I think this is a great bit of work. And I would move, Mr. Chairman, if you're ready for a motion, that we adopt staff recommendation on agenda item 8.
All right, thank you, Director George. It's been moved and seconded. Moved by Director George, seconded by Director Hawkins to approve staff recommendation on agenda item, just a minute, 8. Is there any discussion? Director Wells.
Linda, the recommendation that you read off the screen is different than the recommendation in the board item, which is longer. So the coordination with the various agencies is not in the written, but the written one also has the conclusion that it's appropriate to preserve and improve the natural environment. So what are we voting on?
Thank you for pointing that out. I apologize. I neglected to put that into the slides, and so that is definitely part of the recommendation. I will point out that the first part of the recommendation that I did verbalize today is different from the recommendation in your memo, because that one had the 300 CFS limitation. So I would like to add the second part of my recommendation. Would you like me to read it into the record, or?
So
It would
Just
be-
help us understand. So you,
Yes.
the first part of the recommendation is correct, that was on the screen?
It is correct.
And then you want to add the second part?
Yes, the
that
second
was-
is that we're recommending that the board conclude that the proposed use of the remaining leased water from April 1st to December 31st is appropriate to preserve and improve the natural environment in the 15-mile reach of the Colorado River to a reasonable degree from July 1st to September 30th, preserving the natural environment by supplementing existing in-stream flow rights in the 15-mile reach, and improve the natural environment by providing water above the decreed in-stream flow rates to help meet or reduce shortfalls to the Fish and Wildlife flow recommendations for the endangered fish critical habitat, and for the time periods of April 1st to June 30th and October 1st to December 31st, preserve the natural environment by providing an incremental amount of water to help meet or reduce shortfalls to the flow recommendations. Thank you, Director Wells. I apologize for that omission.
Good catch, Director Wells. Is that okay with you, Director George? And
I take every word of it.
okay. And you, Director Hawkins. Okay. So we're good to go. Is there any further discussion? Director Randall.
Here, I just want to echo Director George's support for this and thank the staff for its work on it. As I look at this, it increases stream flows on the Colorado River. It helps endangered fish in their habitat, and it doesn't cost any more money. So what's not to like, right? So happy to support this. Thanks, Linda.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you too, Linda, for being responsive this way. This just makes sense. We may not have any extra water, but if we do, it just makes sense that we can use it like we do the other water that we have in Rudai. So, and I'm with Director George. I didn't know it would be that difficult to do all these different things, but thank you for your work on this. And I want to thank the River District for working with us as well. So, all right, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we shall proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, agenda item 9, Colorado Watershed Restoration Program update. Chris Sturm.
Good morning, Chris Sturm with the Watershed and Flood Protection Section. This is an informational item to update you on the Colorado Watershed Restoration Program. I've got 3 slides up here that are on 22nd cycle, and I'm sorry if you can't read it, but these are the applications that we received after the memo was prepared. So by the 5 o'clock deadline on November 2nd, we did receive 29 applications. The total funding request was $3.8 million, a little bit north of that. And the match for that was impressive. It was nearly 16 million. Of that, from the stream management plan portion of the grant types, there was a little over 1.1 million in requests. That's 9 applications, matched with 1.4 million. So we've got a heavy match out of this round of 29 applications, but really that's influenced just by 4 applications for pretty big projects, 2 of which are recovery from fires in the Spring Creek fire and the 416 fire, so in La Plata County and in Huerfano and Castilla counties. And more on that in just a moment. The breakdown of this is that we received applications from most of the basins. We didn't see any from the Metro, the Rio Grande, or the North Platte. The Arkansas submitted 7 applications, 4 from the Colorado, 4 from the Gunnison, 7 from the South Platte, 4 from the Southwest Basin, 2 from the Yampa, and 1 that has a statewide nexus. 3 of the applications, totaling nearly 1.1 million in requests, are to directly support the fire and subsequent flood recovery efforts for the Spring Creek fire and the 416 fire. It's likely that these applications are going to elevate in priority because of their connection to protecting life and property. I've seen both of these areas, and there are some pretty substantial concerns. The idea here would be to review these applications through our normal process. If they meet the basic criteria, we're not going to get too picky with the details, and probably bring a funding recommendation to the board in January. Staff is going to be doing everything possible to contract these projects first out of the gate, so that if they are approved for funding, there won't be any delay in getting the funds down to these communities so they could start implementing their projects. I think the timing is right in that there's not a whole lot that can be done. There are some things that can be done, but not the bulk of the work that can be done in the winter months. I think the real need will be addressing this before runoff and before any monsoon in 2019. It'll also be our intent to work with these applicants, if funded, very closely to ensure that we've got solid technical projects that can protect the folks at risk for as long as needed, meaning while these watersheds are recovering from the fires. The biggest impact is that the hydrology changes post-fire, so that a storm that used to create a 2-year flow event can now create a 50-year flow event or greater. So that's a big concern in these communities. That's all I have for today, so I'll just open it up for questions.
All right, thank you, Chris. Are there any questions for Chris? Director Hawkins.
This isn't a question. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the application from La Plata County for the 416 fire. And just wanted to let the board know that La Plata County is really stepping up and seeking both state and federal funds to address the risk to life and property that we have. We have a 54,000 acre fire burn scar sitting above a population. And so there's real risk to private property and life. We've got some low-income housing in the area, so this is really important work. We're talking about people's lives and people that get nervous every time we get rain, which is really not how we should be after the water year that we had last year. So thank you for working with La Plata County. I really look forward to seeing those applications for the post-fire recovery come forward in January.
All right. Thank you, Director Hawkins. Any other questions? All right, thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
All right, we are pretty close to on schedule. So this is our lunch break. So we'll reconvene at the schedule 12:50 for the staff and the board. Our lunch is next door to the left here. So if just a reminder, it's for the staff and the board. If you want to wait around and there's food available, I'm like Director Ryan, I don't like waste necessarily, so I don't have an internal document or anything, but anyway, if we'll go ahead and break for lunch and reconvene at 12:50.